Tired of the finger pointing, business disruptions, risks, lawsuits, lack of accountability, and the never-ending paper chase? For those of you in real estate who struggle to ensure work is done correctly, look no further. We bring a revolutionary smart building solution for any property operation. StringBean automates your workflows with a library of 300-plus best practices and step-by-step prompts that place quality control into every task, while our AI escalates any anomalies. To learn how our clients go live in 48 hours, check out our case studies and schedule a demo at www.StringBean.tech.
This podcast is sponsored by Bellissimo Hats. Bellissimo Hats is the #1 luxurious hat brand in North America. They make all styles for all occasions, and you can even design your own hat. The price for these quality hats are a bargain, so go to bellissimohats.com and use code SFB10 for 10% off at checkout, and enjoy the podcast.
Welcome back to the SFB podcast. Today we have Alex Shulman. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Looking forward to sharing my knowledge, wealth, wisdom.
And we're all looking forward. And today we also have my dad, CEO of, I made the same joke on the last podcast, CEO of Shulman Realty. Alex Shulman is the owner of Shulman Hill. Shulman Hill is the New York's most trusted and fastest growing plaintiff's injury law firm. They're really good at fighting the good fight, and they have recovered over $400 million in settlements on behalf of their clients. So that's big stuff, so thank you for being here.
My pleasure, and looking forward to sharing what I can share. And it's a pleasure to be with you and your father.
Thank you. So just to get right into it, so can you please give a short explanation of what you do?
Absolutely. One of the incredible things about our country, and it's a country with flaws like any other country, but one of the incredible things about our country is that if somebody suffers an injustice or a perceived injustice, they get to have a jury of their peers make a decision on whether they're entitled to any damages based on the unfortunate incident that happened to them. So what we do is we represent the injured in various types of accidents. Mm-hmm. So we have a number of departments. So we have a workers' compensation department where we represent individuals that are injured at work. Most of them are blue-collar employees, although we also have many white-collar employees. We then have a personal injury department where we represent individuals that are injured in car accidents, in trip and falls, and construction accidents, ceiling collapses, any sort of catastrophic occurrence that you can think of. We then have a civil rights department where we represent individuals that are the victims of police brutality and false imprisonment. So unfortunately, mistakes happen. People go away to prison for years and sometimes decades, and then they get freed based on DNA evidence, newly discovered evidence. We represent those individuals. And then in addition to that, we also have something called Social Security disability, which is long-term disability for individuals that are not yet of disability age, of retirement age, where it's a supplement to our other practice areas where we can get people the help they need to kind of support their families in the times of need. So, if an individual gets injured, what we do is we make sure that they get the proper medical treatment to aid them in their recovery. We make sure that they get compensated for the time that they miss from work if they are missing time from work. And then we attempt to get them a settlement based on their damages and the negligence, of various third parties.
Wow, so you really cover a lot.
We cover a lot,
wow.
And we do it with many people, and we have been growing, and we have a formula that we think works.
Wow. Okay, so you didn't grow up in the U.S., correct? You grew up in...
No, I grew up in the Soviet Union, in
wow.
the Ukraine.
Okay, so at what age did you move here?
So when I was 7 years old, we came to America. I grew up in Detroit.
Wow. So when you were a kid, did you always want to do law?
No. When I was a kid, and into my teenage years, I wanted to take over the world and change the world and affect the world and make the world a better place.
But you didn't know how you were going to do that.
I did not know how I was going to do that. So initially, when I was growing up and in university, I was very focused on politics, and I was involved in that whole world. I spent a couple summers on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. I spent a summer at Georgetown and a summer at George Washington University. And I worked at the Anti-Defamation League, and I worked at the United States Department of Commerce. And I was looking to, make the world a little bit more perfect.
Right.
But as I got a little bit more mature, I came to the conclusion that really that perfection has to start with me. And I have to kind of work on myself a little bit and affect what I'm able to affect in my daily life. And then from that, you can kind of make the ripples and impact the world in the most cognizant way.
Right. So do you think growing up in Russia or Soviet Union, do you think that had an impact on you trying to perfect the world? Did it come from that? Like you came from a different culture and now you're in the U.S. and
I think if you ever speak to first generation immigrants, a lot of us have a chip on our shoulders.
Right.
Because, our parents, we all came over and, my father went to work he was an educated man. He went to work as a mover, we're earning $5 an hour. And we kind of started from that. And, I wanted to affect the world and I wanted to become the best and the biggest at whatever I did.
all right.
So it sounds like you're fulfilling the American dream.
I am fulfilling my version of the American dream. Yes, to me, I feel like I am the luckiest person in the world. And the reason that I feel that way is I'm able to make a tangible difference to really impact people that otherwise could not have helped the help that they receive from us in our firm. And we're able to kind of make a difference in people's lives on a daily basis.
Right. So when you matured and you realized you can't perfect the whole world, but you can work on yourself, how'd that turn into law? And you're like, I want to do law.
Well, in other words, the legal field and kind of our, I'm an attorney, obviously. The legal world and the legal field is catered as a service in the industry to try to, help individuals. There are various facets, of the legal world. There's transactional work and there's litigation work. I was not so interested in reading, 1,000-page contracts and making commas and putting semicolons where they needed to be, although that's tremendous work, and I, applaud the people that do that, or, to extensively review tax documents. Those are things that I personally cannot do. So I thought that the litigation world was really a world catered to me. And, I feel like I had the unique background of being able to have empathy for the people that I help. And it's because, I grew up in a blue-collar household, and I had every single blue-collar job that you can think of. I was a busboy waiting. I was waiting tables. I was cleaning tables. I was moving chairs, moving tables. So in my daily career, I was able to kind of form relationships with my clients. And that relationship building was really based on a mutual respect. To not look down on an individual because of where they came from or what they do or what life has thrown at them, but really to have genuine empathy and to try to raise the person up, to put them to a place, to a greater place, a place, where they can get back on their feet and kind of move forward.
All right. So is that everyone needs to find their niche in any market they get into, right? So is that where you found your niche by trying to help others?
Absolutely. So that was, yes, I found the calling and I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed helping and I enjoyed making a difference.
Right.
And
okay.
I also, that translated into building a pretty significant business.
So how far into your career, do you have any questions?
You're doing great. I'm
Yeah?
just watching and felling.
Okay, fine. So how far into your career did you start Shulman Hill?
So I'll tell you like this. So I came out of law school in New York in 2008. So you were alive in 2008?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were 3 years old in 2008, believe it or not, it was the worst market to be an attorney.
Right.
So I was newly married, and I spent 6 months in my in-laws' basement. Nobody would hire me. Nobody would give me a job for any amount of money.
Wow.
What type of law were you originally trying to practice?
I was trying to practice the type of law that would give me a paycheck to, kind of get an apartment with my wife and kind of take the next step and things of that nature. We ended up moving. I was trying to find something, grasping for straws. So we ended up moving to Boca Raton for a short time. I worked for a real estate attorney. This guy would force me to play tennis in the mornings before I came to work. It happens to be I played tennis in high school. So, I got the rusty racket and I did what I needed to do. Right. But that really wasn't a fit for me. I came back to New York rather quickly. And almost immediately, I was put into a position where I began working at a plaintiff's law firm.
And what year is this?
This was in 2009.
Okay.
And then kind of things developed. And 4 years into my career of working for somebody else, I was a partner. I was doing very well. I was succeeding. But, we have big dreams and big desires and,
Right.
And a thirst to conquer. And as such, I went out on my own. It's actually going to be in about 3 weeks. It's going to be 10 years.
Wow.
So I'm hitting the 10-year mark.
Are you buying yourself a Rolex?
Yes. I will buy myself a Rolex.
Good.
Yeah. So, step by step through 10 years of kind of, it has not been easy. There's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been a lot of hard work. But we've built a very serious litigation firm. I just interviewed an attorney that would be my 26th attorney in-house. And we have almost 100 people in-house.
Wow.
And we've handled over 18,000 cases.
Wow.
in the time period that we have been open, and we are growing exponentially.
So how did you know 4 years in that you were ready to move on and create your own company? Because that's a big step.
I think every single person, what I told my wife, I told her, and it's interesting that you asked that question because, I told my wife we have two options, and I will defer to you on which option you prefer. Either we can buy a house. I had a small down payment on a house after 4 years of working, or we have to defer the house for a few years and I can start a business. Now, if we buy the house, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to start my law firm, or I could do this. So she was very, very nervous, but she gave me her blessing. And again, I'm somebody that's constantly moving, innovating, trying to kind of look for the next thing and the next big thing, and I'm really never satisfied with the status quo. So to me, it was just natural that I was going to break out and try to kind of do something on my own.
Right.
Day one, you have a coffee table, you have a phone, you got limited funds. How did you start day one?
That's a great question. On day number one, so I went on Craigslist and I sublet a space from these motivational speakers.
Okay.
I bought, they had a table from like IKEA or something like that. I bought it for like $200. And then I went to, Walmart, and I think I bought a few chairs. And then my wife came and we bought some folders. And I said to her, I can't start putting our clients by number from number one, because then people are going to think I'm starting from like scratch. Like, what am I going to do when I come to court?
My father had that.
So I started from client 101, but it was really client number one.
Good.
So I had some of my personal clients that ended up coming over with me to my firm. I think we started with approximately 40 clients, relatively small cases, but I cultivated a lot of loyalty through kind of the years of me building relationships with my clients, and we went from there, and then I started running, and I started sweating, but really, what kind of led to the exponential growth is that every single individual that we met, and we have a mission statement. You know what our mission statement is?
What's that?
We want to build the most client-centric, innovative, talented law firm in New York.
So it's all about customer service.
Everything is customer service, and we are obsessively client-driven and client-oriented to the extent that if you are not a people pleaser, that if you are not somebody who's going to respect the client, who's going to try to help the client, who's going to pick up the phone every single time the client calls, who's going to go above and beyond, then you could be an excellent person, but you are not going to be a fit for kind of what we are crafting in our office. So the entire law firm was built around the client experience.
Got it.
So if I may, day two sounds like, I always talk about Ruben the barber. You ever go to Ruben to get your hair cut?
Of course.
Okay, so Ruben became very popular, right? All of a sudden now Ruben's got more business than he can handle. So he needs to hire more people. Day two, you can't handle the business, meaning everybody loves. You want to answer it?
No, delegating, right?
No, that's question
sorry.
number 3.
Okay.
But everybody loves Alex. Alex is service oriented. Everybody wants to go to Shulman. Everybody wants to, right? And someone gets hurt. Oh, you gotta here's Alex Shulman's card. He's helped me. He da. Right. So what was the next step that you that you took when you're overburdened, you just can't get your head above water because you just got so many calls coming in? What'd you do?
So I'll tell you what I did. Number one, I interviewed somebody to be a receptionist, and I said, I can't pay you a full-time salary, but you can come in and work for maybe 20 hours per week, okay? Just to answer some phone calls while I'm in court, things of that nature, okay? Then I was running around trying to meet people that could, send me business, and I met somebody, and they made a phone call, and, everything is from above, and I met a man, and it happens to be that the person that I had a doctor I knew who introduced me to somebody she knew who couldn't help me, but he said, you know what? You're a nice Jewish boy. I want to try to help you. Let me call somebody I met the other week. So he called a guy he barely knew. So this guy came to my office and he started laughing at me. And he said, I don't work with people like you. I work with the real law firms. This is you're sitting. This is like a little hole in the wall, and there's a desktop and a chair. And he started laughing. But he said, you know what? I'm gonna give you a shot. So what he had is he had a business, an advertising business that was catered to the Spanish-speaking population. So I asked him, when can you start sending me clients? So he said, today. He said, do you have somebody that speaks Spanish? I said, no, but I'm going to have somebody tomorrow. So and I hired somebody, and thank God that was a very, very, very fruitful relationship. Mm-hmm. And we kind of kept growing and growing until 6 months into the business I met my partner.
Oh, that wasn't your partner? That
was not my partner.
Okay.
This was just somebody that was kind of bringing in business, sending me clients. What happened that was very fortuitous, you should know, as a preface to this, I told my wife the second time I met her that I was going to marry her. I barely knew her, but you get a hunch sometimes. Right. So I was invited to a basketball game, a Nets game, by somebody that was sending me work at that time, another law firm, and there was a young man there, and they said, please speak with him. He's going out on his own in the next couple months. So I spoke with him for perhaps 30 minutes, and I told him it's not easy. It's a lot. And then I got his number, and I said, come meet me at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, and I pitched him for him to come with me and for us to do it together and to kind of take over New York City together. And that was that was an incredible decision based on a hunch. And we've been running ever since together.
Right. Hence, Shulman and Hill.
That's right. So we started growing. And your father could appreciate this. There comes a time in every business where, you have the named partner, but then you get to a certain scale where you need other people to help transact the business. In my case, it's handle the cases, speak with the clients, things of that nature, go to court. So it's inherently a very, very big struggle for many people to give over the quality of representation that the named partner gives over, because it's your baby, it's your business, it's your essence. So, and by the way, this transition is really what separates the men from the boys. Because if you're not able to get to that next level, to transcend your personality, and then to give over your personality to other people in the business, to imbue them with that passion, with that expertise, with that knowledge, with that drive, the focus to succeed and to care about the client as much as you do, then you hit a dead end. So we were luckily able to bring in some very, very talented people who we developed into tremendous attorneys who, have been with us for, some of them, almost the entire kind of tenure of our law firm.
Right. So you mentioned that you just interviewed your, what number attorney?
So we have our 25th attorney starting next month, and then this would be number 26.
Right. So when you're interviewing all these people, what are you looking for in a prospective employee?
So that's a great question. So first and foremost, there are two key facets that we've seen that form the crux of any business, to us personally, that are the most valuable. I'll tell you what we used to think, and I'll tell you what we think now. We used to think that, number one, you have to have a subject matter expert. Happens to be that the lawyer we just interviewed has been he's a very serious litigator. He's been doing it for almost 20 years. He fits that box. He checks that box. So I thought it was the subject matter expertise that was most relevant. And then everything else we were able to teach. What we found is it's actually culture that's most relevant. We're looking for the right personality fit, the right personality type for our firm.
Not necessarily the skill?
Not necessarily the skill. And if you have the right personality fit, then you can teach them. You can teach them the skills, number one. And you can kind of take them to the best places and the biggest places. But yeah, go ahead.
So I have a quick question about your culture. I went onto your website last night just while Ellie was preparing for this podcast, and I noticed that you have people from all different backgrounds, different languages. Some appear were not born in this country. You talk about culture. How do you get such a dynamic, diverse background and become homogeneous in that culture?
First and foremost, I take what you just said as the biggest compliment in the world to me. It's been extremely important to me from the inception. You guys should know, my sister, she's much smarter than me. She graduated. She was a valedictorian of her high school class. She works at Google as like a big person in HR.
Wow.
And she said, Alex, if Google could have the representation that you have in your law firm, my bosses would be so happy.
Right.
My bosses would be overwhelmingly joyful. That one of the central tenets of what we believe in and what we've been trying to build is that we are New York representing New Yorkers.
Right.
And what I conveyed, we just had our mid-year event for my law firm, and what I conveyed to every single one of them is, I said, if you walk on every single block in New York City, any block, and you look at the people on that block, they're going to look like us. Like various people in our office. Why? Mm-hmm. Because diversity makes you stronger. It makes you stronger, and what we want to do, and this is the beautiful part about America, is that anybody can come into our law firm and raise themselves up by their bootstraps. It doesn't matter what family you came from. It doesn't matter what law school you went to. It doesn't matter what your experience was. In fact, one of our top hires in the past, I would say, year had zero experience in the legal field. But the person came in and is just completely skyrocketing.
You mentioned something at the beginning, and I almost interrupted you, and then you said the word when you're describing yourself and what your background trained you was the word empathy. It seems like if someone does not have the background in litigation, it seems like empathy for your hires is an overriding factor, meaning putting yourself in the victim's shoes, and then you can represent them in the best way possible. Is that part of your hiring practice?
Absolutely. You know, we're looking for people that care about other people,
right,
that try to lift up other people. Now, look, you can be successful in our business as a technician and as a professional, right, without having that empathy. But if you guys are talking about superstars and star performers and taking things to the next level, right, this is what we're speaking about. I'll give you guys one example that I dealt with in the last couple months. And this is just an example that happens every single day in New York City that people would not know about. We had a Spanish-speaking client, speaks very little English. He was involved in a car accident, okay? He got a call from one of the major insurance companies. And they said, the next day or the day after, they said, we'll give you $5,000 to settle your case. So this man, he probably makes $400 a week.
Right.
Maybe,
like, I'll take it.
He
Right.
said, I'll take that.
Right.
Please send it to me. He signed the paperwork. Then he started recognizing, going to doctors, that he was very seriously injured, that he had very serious injuries. Mm-hmm. And then he turned to an attorney after taking that $5,000, after taking that money, and he said, was this right what the insurance company did? Or did I get taken advantage of? Can you help me in any way? So we had this case referred to us by another law firm, and we went to court, and we said that this was a person, English was not his native language. Mm-hmm. He signed a release in English that was, you know, I'm just saying this in the nicest way, but it was coerced by the insurance company when this person didn't understand with any sort of sophistication what happened. And what happened was the judge agreed with us. She stated that release was not valid, and the case ended up settling for in excess of $100,000.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And this is just an example of somebody, and can you imagine the transformative impact on this person's life? Now he has money to send his children to college. Now he has money to kind of take the next step in life, whatever that next step in life is.
That probably feels really good as a lawyer that you can help people like that.
Tremendous. And what I convey every single day to the people that we have in-house is we are tangibly transforming lives. If you guys want to make a difference, everybody wants to make a difference in the world, right? It's very difficult sometimes to see, how am I making a difference? At Shulman Hill, you're making a difference every single day.
So you were just describing a case where it sounded like you put your cape on and you went and saved the day for this person who English was not his first language. And he was being taken advantage of. And it kind of reminded me of, they talk about all the superheroes were created by people who came out of countries of oppression, what have you. And it reminded me a lot of that, where you're the Cape Crusader, so to speak. You're just missing your cape, It's amazing.
If you could convey that to my wife, I would appreciate that.
So, but, it seems like there are a lot of stories, human stories, and, that you probably can even write a book about in terms of because that was a situation where it turned out well. But you probably deal with people who have some serious injuries or even death. I mean, how do you? Me, I do real estate deals. So either I create wealth or additional wealth, or I retain wealth if things are not going well. Right? You're dealing with people who've injured, maimed. It seems like there's a lot of humanity in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis.
And I think to kind of, shine a light on your question, you also have to understand these are people at their lowest moments.
Mm-hmm.
They're the most vulnerable because a lot of them are not working. They have no income.
Right.
They're physically injured. They're the breadwinners. They don't know where they're going to buy diapers for their children, where their bread is going to come from the next day. So that leads to a lot of frustration from them. What I convey to my people in-house is that the client is the employer and we're the employee.
Mm-hmm.
So our job is to do anything we can to convey to first of all, we have to convey to them properly what their options are, how we can help them, things of that nature. We have to have tremendous empathy. Yes.
So what's clear to me is that your heart is massive. I don't know how it fits in that little body. So when you're dealing with people who are struggling, it's very hard to maintain professionalism and not get pulled into the emotions of what they're dealing with in their own personal lives.
I mean, look, it's no different than being a surgeon, right? In other words, if you're a physician, and this is a tremendous struggle because let's say when I was starting out, I had a deep relationship, let's say with 10, 15 clients. Mm-hmm. Some of them I remember, they said, Alex, you changed my life. I bought a house. And now I'm able to kind of take the next step in my life.
Right.
That personal relationship. Now we're handling thousands of cases. I have thousands of cases right now in my law firm. So how do you stay warm-blooded? How do you have that empathy on an individual basis without turning into a technician, being cold? And this is where culture comes in. This is where hiring the right people comes in. This is where conveying the message on an ongoing basis comes in.
Do you have a therapist on staff? Because if you have 25, 26, 100 employees, it seems like their emotions can get in the way of servicing a client or, taking a settlement. I'm sure there's debates. Do you go all the way or do you take the settlement for the client? And, people can get emotionally pulled into these stories.
Absolutely. I think the bigger struggle in our profession and what's allowed us to separate ourselves from everybody else is a lot of other attorneys look at this as a transactional, numbers-based, money-based business where we're looking at the humanity of it. And as a result of looking at the humanity of every single individual and trying to help them in their own personal life rebuild themselves. And how do I help you? Because Ms. Jones, your case and accident is very different from Ms. Rodriguez. Right. Your family situation is different. Your future is different. Your education is different.
So you take the whole picture of the whole person involved.
Correct. So and that is the separation and the distinction between us and the vast majority of individuals in our profession.
You're not looking for the quick buck for your firm. You're looking to service the community at large.
And believe it or not, we had the New York Law Journal. They wrote an article on our law firm, and what I conveyed to them was exactly this. We're not overly focused on the individual recovery on the individual case. Now, don't get me wrong. We just settled 2 cases for $1 million each, 2 car accident cases in the last 3 months. But that's not what drives us. We're focused on being in the community and helping the community. There are some cases that we take on that we don't make money. We are only purely doing this, and I tell our clients, we are purely serving as an insurance policy for you if things go in a bad direction for you in the future. But there's a good chance I'm not going to make any financial recovery here.
Right.
But that's okay because we are serving the community, and we're in your community. You know, we're doing, for example, a backpack drive in 2 weeks in the Bronx. We're giving away backpacks to children going back to school. For some people, that doesn't make a tangible difference. For them, it's really significant for these families. It's a big deal.
I got a split, but I thought the world of you prior to having this conversation. Now I'm part of the Alex Shulman fan club. If there's an opportunity for me, fill out an application, be the president. And by the way, this guy Hill, I'm sorry, he's got to be quite an individual if he is your partner.
He's the best
since the beginning.
The best.
That's amazing. Anyway, thank you, and I'm just gonna. You guys keep going.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you, Ken.
I could probably answer this question based on what you've been talking about, but what keeps you motivated to wake up every day? Because a lot of people experience burnout, right? You're now 14 years into law, right? So what keeps you motivated every single day to wake up and do better than you did yesterday?
Listen, I have a tremendous sense of purpose,
right.
You know, and it's exactly what I just conveyed. And it's because there is a purpose that's driven by much more than money, you know, by servicing the community is very, very significant.
All right. Do you think when you don't focus on the money, that's when it really comes? Because it seems like you're not focused on making the money, but it's coming.
I think if you overly focus on money, most people end up in a very, very bad place, because then ethics come into question and questionable business practices, you know, questionable business decisions are made, and then all sorts of things, you know, go wrong. But if you're focusing on servicing the community, helping every single client, you know, in their unique way, then all those other things are going to take care of themselves. The main thing that we have to do is to bring more goodness into the world. And that's really what we're trying to do here.
Right. So what characteristics, we're going to go a little more into advice, right? What characteristics do you think it takes for someone to become a successful lawyer? Because a lot of people get into law, but I would say obviously most people don't become extremely successful.
I would say it takes a number of things. A lawyer or any other profession. Okay. You want me to tell you?
Yes, please. I need it.
Fine. The first thing that I would say is that a person has to start thinking. And, you know, certainly I was not doing a podcast when I was 18 years old. I was running around with my buddies. A person has to start thinking when he's 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. What interests me and how can I affect the world for the good and the positive, right? And that could be in the business world, right? You know, most people think I have to go work in a non-for-profit, or, you know, I have to be a rabbi or clergy, you know, to affect the world. But it's certainly not true. Right? I'll give you an example. I had our law firm was featured in the New York Times. I had a woman call me, and she said, she was in her 90s, well into her 90s. And she said, I want you to know. Now, obviously, you have video here? Yes? This is a videotape?
Yeah.
So obviously I'm an Orthodox Jew, very, very visible with my beard and my yarmulke. So she said to me that she grew up observant, but she no longer is observant. But she wanted to call me and tell me how proud she was to see an outwardly observant, you know, Jewish man in the New York Times. That in her day, it was unheard of something like this to happen.
Right.
You know, again, she grew up, I don't know when, in the 30s or 40s or 50s, whatever it is. You know, we can impact the world in a tremendous way, okay? But the first thing is that a person has to think and find out what he's interested in.
So, sorry if I may cut you off. How does one find, because I feel like that's what most people struggle with. They want to do that, but they don't know how they're going to affect the world in a positive way. So
what I'm trying to convey is every single person where he is placed through his natural intuition of what he's drawn to. Let's say your father's in the real estate world. Mm-hmm. In the real estate world, he can bring tremendous goodness to the world, those everyday interactions in the business world, right? So a person has to, first and foremost, to be passionate, to care, and to not suffer burnout, like you said. You have to find out what you like to do, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in. And that could be so many different things. And you can bring light and goodness into so many different areas of the world, right? That's first and foremost. right? The second thing that a person has to do is they have to develop a very serious work ethic. Okay? Now, if you ask 100 people, and look, we've had, for better or for worse, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees. Okay? If you ask 100 people, are you a hard worker? 95 will say yes, and 5 will say most of the time. But really, a person has to understand what hard work means, and also what smart work means. And to me, really what it means is consistency, reliability. We've seen many, many superstars that have come and gone in my business, in our law firm. But superstars, they're stars. They come and they rise and they fade and they're gone. But really the top performers are consistently, day in, day out, dependable. And in that way, a person's able to kind of get to a very, very big place.
And that's why when you're interviewing people, you're not going for the skill. You're going for the good characteristic, the character traits it takes, because that's what helps you long term.
Absolutely.
Right.
The other thing that paradoxically, that is very, very beneficial to people in their career, sometimes, in business, and you can speak with your father more about this when he gets back, there are many, many people that talk a lot. About their performance or deliverables or what they could do for you or how they can raise you up, things of that nature. There are and you know what? The best people on their best day deliver what they promise after talking a lot. But there are very, very few people that don't speak so much, but that deliver at a tremendous caliber, that are high performers without saying so much. So it's better to keep your head down, don't say much, and deliver on an ongoing basis.
As both my parents say, and my grandparents, less is more.
Less is more.
Right.
And anytime you bring a problem to your boss, also come with a solution. Because to find a problem in a company or a business or in life, that's very, very easy to do. Everybody can shine a spotlight on negativity or holes or issues that need resolution. But to come with a solution when you're bringing that is a big thing.
So you're saying, if let's say you have a problem that you need to go to your boss for, right? You go in with the problem, but then offer a solution.
Yes, or two or three. And
smart.
That's not only smart, that is a game-changing, revolutionary behavior that will allow people to succeed in their careers.
So when you have like an employee comes to you and is like, I have this issue with this client, this is going on, and then they say, I have 3 options I can do for this client, and then you look at that person differently than someone that comes in with the problem, what do you suggest?
Absolutely. Or the way that most people come to me, because the higher you go up the food chain in any organization, the more that you're dealing with the issues and problems. I'm not the person that most people come to with good news on an ongoing basis. I'm dealing with all of the things that need fixing.
Right.
Exactly. So even though 95% of things are going right, the 5%, there's a big spotlight. And it's on my shoulders. And you have to remember, even though, we've represented we've had 18,000 cases we've ran, and we represent thousands of clients currently on current cases, our law firm gets, almost 1,000 calls a day.
Wow.
Every single conversation at the end of the day is on my shoulders, and it's my responsibility to make sure that client gets catered to. And that brings me to the last point that I want to bring out, is that every single person has to believe, wherever they are in their professional lives, that if they're seeing problems or issues or things that need correction, that the person to be worked on is me. In other words, I am going to be the source of the resolution of this issue, and I'm going to fix that issue. Instead of, the behavior that a lot of people engage in, like pointing fingers or, ascribing blame, and people become very smart. Right. They're like, okay, there are 6 blame points. This person is 20% to blame, and this person is 5%. This person is 40%. When a person takes responsibility, and you have to remember that the central characteristic of a leader, of people, is the obligation, the necessity, and the willingness to take responsibility on your shoulders. If a person is willing to take responsibility on their shoulders and say that everything depends on me, and the well-being of this company depends on my actions, then that is a person that's going to rise through the ranks very, very quickly, whether they're in an organization or a company, or, naturally a lot of these people are going to move on and open up their own companies because the world is lacking leadership.
Right. So, yeah, a lot of people nowadays talk about how the work ethic, the laziness, right? All the good character traits are going like downhill, right? That's what a lot of people say. So what do you think those character traits are that people are lacking nowadays that it wasn't like in the past generations?
This is what I'm going to say about that. I actually think that it's patently false.
Really?
And believe it or not, I also see, because I remember I have all sorts of people working for me. I have people that are in their 50s, and I have people that are 20, right? And the generational shift is real.
Mm-hmm.
But really, first and foremost, the central tenet of kind of the way that we operate in my law firm is with optimism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Optimism means that we take challenges and we make them opportunities. We turn them into opportunities. That means that when you're speaking about people that are quote unquote, you just conveyed, lazier, or they're not lacking as many good character traits, I think that's absolutely false. I think what the younger generation needs, and Gen Z or however you want to, they need a sense of meaning and purpose in order to bring out their full strengths. Whereas, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, people kind of came to work, and there's something very much that I love about that. People came to work, and they needed to earn a paycheck, and they needed to be responsible for their families.
That's probably how you started out.
That's how I started, and listen, I'm an old soul.
Right.
That's how I think, anyways.
Right.
That's how I think, and that's how I think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, to motivate people, you have to imbue them with a purpose. And if you're able to give them a purpose, and if they buy into the mission of what you're trying to accomplish, not only is this generation not weaker, they can scale and they can reach much greater heights.
So how do you say we do that? I mean, obviously it starts from you, right? You can't change as you said earlier, you can't change the world. But how do you implement that into your career?
So the first thing I do is we operate with optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of pointing fingers, we look for solutions and opportunities to grow and to nurture and to train and to develop people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that starts with me, and that goes down to my leadership team, and that goes down to my attorneys, that goes down to our staff managers, to our staff, all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And we speak about what a great honor and privilege it is, and we kind of speak about those values of what we stand for and what we do on an ongoing basis.
So you're always reminding people that they're fulfilling an amazing purpose, right?
Yes, but at the end of the day, you can talk the talk,
right?
In other words, your parents could have told you a lot of things, but at the end of the day, you're observing the way that they behave.
Mm-hmm.
You're observing their character traits. How do they relate to adversity? How do they relate to... So at the end of the day, I could say whatever I want. They're looking at me, and they're seeing what's my behavior like when this client comes in. What's my behavior like when we get a big settlement? What's my behavior like when we lose a case? What's my behavior like when we have a very big problem and I can point fingers and say that it's clearly, and look, those situations do arise. It's clearly your fault that you did not fulfill the obligations of your employment.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of pointing a finger, I look at myself and I look in the mirror and say, really, that's my responsibility. And it's really because I did not provide sufficient clarity to this individual to kind of fulfill their role in the company. That's really where the hole was created. So Alex, at the end of the day, look in the mirror, buddy, because don't point fingers. If you're pointing a finger, point it at yourself, because that's where it all comes from.
So on paper, what's more important for an employer is not about what's on paper. It's about how you act throughout the day, because all your employees, even if it's subconscious, they're watching how you react throughout the day with different adversity. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. But I think that if you have the proper attitude and the proper vision and the proper drive with what you're trying to fulfill every single day, that will end up resulting in a superior work product on paper. Because I also don't want to kid ourselves. In other words, at the end of the day, everything is about work product. In other words, we're better attorneys than everybody else. If we were only more caring than everybody else, then we should probably be social workers.
Right.
In other words, we have to be caring and empathetic. That's a necessity, and that's pulsating within what we do. But we also have to be the best attorneys. We have to be the best appellate attorneys. We have to be the lawyers that help clients recover the quickest. We have to work with the best partners with physicians. Right. We have to put it all together, all the pieces together.
Mm-hmm. All right. So when you came from the Soviet Union, right? So for you to get to this level of success, you have to have had a mentor, right? Did you?
I would say that, my parents were mentors to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not somebody that, look, my Judaism is very important to me, and kind of the central tenets of our faith. Like, for example, when I was starting the law firm, I said, I'm going to do this the right way, and if it doesn't succeed, then I'll go do something else, and it'll be okay. But there's no cutting corners. Right? It's like what I said, don't focus on money.
Right.
Focus on doing the right thing every single day for every single client, and then everything else will come into place. Look, my parents were a tremendous influence on me, and it's not about anything they did or anything that they said. It's about the way that they conducted their lives, right? And I think that's not something that everybody has. For those that do have parents, call them and tell them you love them and that you appreciate them. For those that don't have parents or one parent to look up to as a role model, you have to find somebody that espouses the right values and the values that you stand for, and you have to adopt a mentor. I think that's very, very vital, both for personal development and for professional development.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you didn't have, besides your parents, but you didn't have a professional mentor in the business. You kind of learned everything as you went.
I think I learned the subject matter of what I did. I paid extreme attention to detail. Like my father's a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. So I paid extreme attention to detail. I learned it very, very well. And I was able to do my job very, very well. And that's kind of where I went. I will say, to answer your question, I'm not somebody who's like reading leadership books on an ongoing basis or taking leadership courses on an ongoing basis. I've been doing this, kind of one step at a time. And there are outside resources that could be of help. And, I never dreamt that I would have a company of almost 100 people in-house.
Right.
But here I am. And now the question is, how do I get it to 1,000 people without losing my mind? As your father said, you probably have a psychiatrist, whatever it is, right? That's the other thing.
Right. Okay. So what would you tell, knowing everything that you know now with a successful company, almost 100 employees, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I would say that first and foremost, there are absolutely no obstacles that stand in your way of climbing to the greatest heights. That's number one. The second thing that I would say is that you can bring goodness and kindness into the world from every corner of the world. That means whatever a person chooses to do professionally, wherever he chooses to live, bring light into that place, make that place a place of goodness where you're being helpful and other-oriented, and you can live a very fulfilling life. And the third thing that I would say is get an expertise, get a niche, become a perfectionist in what you do, pay attention to details, do it consistently. Don't be a superstar. Be a consistent, above average performer. And it's like I tell my employees, 1% better every single day. Mm-hmm. And then you can accomplish anything. Right?
Right. Just 1% better than you were the day before.
1% better every single day will get you to a tremendous place. Mm-hmm. And really what we're really focusing on is the long, short road. Right. In other words, success, just so you understand, every time you're climbing the mountain professionally, when you hit the tip of that mountain, you know what you recognize? Oh, wait, there's even there's a higher point.
All right.
I have to get to the higher point. And then when you get to that higher point, brand new vistas open up. There's even a higher point. It's endless.
Right.
It's endless. So really, but the long road, not wanting instantaneous gratification, instantaneous results, instantaneous success. All of these things take time. They take hard work.
It's all about patience.
It's about patience. It's about putting in concerted effort. And it's also about clarity and an understanding of where you are and what it's going to take to get to the next level, right? So some of the most, there's been ups and downs, of course, in any business and any organization, but some of the most tenuous moments in the law firm's history came where we had individuals that didn't have a clarity, where there was not a syncing of the minds, and it was amazing people, but there was not a syncing of the mind of what is your role here, what are the definitions of success, what is the criteria of success, what it means that when you hit the parameters of success, what that means, what is the timeline for success, right?
Right.
And what do you personally want? Believe it or not, what we convey to our employees all the time is, guys, I want you to be the best you. And I want you to be the best you at Shulman Hill. But if you come to a recognition that you could not be the best you at Shulman Hill, then we will help you transition and we will help you find a new role at another company. And we've done this many times. There are many people right now working in the New York City legal market that used to work for me that don't know that I helped them land their jobs. They just thought that they sent a resume out or they reached out to somebody, but we're actively working and trying to help people. And that's our employees in-house, that's our clients, people that used to work for us, vendors that we work with. Every single person that comes into our orbit, we are trying to be beneficial to in some fashion.
So I don't think most people are born with this motivation to help people. So where'd you get that motivation to help people?
That's a wonderful question. I think human beings at their core are good.
Right.
And I think that sometimes we get a little bit dusty and a little bit musty through the trials and tribulations of life. People get kicked a little bit. By the time people are 15, 20, 25, 30 years old, they've had their ups and downs and they're just kind of trying to get by day by day. I think when you peel back the layers, everybody wants to have a positive impact on the world. And if you give people the opportunity to have a positive impact on the world with a sense of meaning, then they can go to tremendous heights.
Okay. So we've been talking about success this whole time, right? So in order to get to this level, you must have had a failure or two, right? Do you have any stories that you have of failure and how that shaped you into the successful person that you are today?
I think there are many, many examples, and I'm really not embarrassed to highlight them simply because every single failure is just another step to the next level of success and fulfillment and growth, right? So I think first and foremost, and it's what I conveyed to you previously, there's a famous Rabbi Palm in Brooklyn. So I heard it said in his name, or he would tell people, and I think it's very, very important, when you're entering into business with other people, it's important to have the terms written down on a piece of paper. And it could be unpleasant at the inception, but it gives people tremendous clarity. And if you have that clarity, even if things don't work out, you can always go back to that piece of paper and that original contractual relationship to say, look, we're both good people. It just didn't work out. We both tried and we both had a meeting of the minds. I've had instances kind of throughout the tenure of the firm where there were tremendous people that worked for me, but there wasn't that meeting of the mind, and everybody had the proper intent, and everybody was really good, and everybody was trying to do good and kind of help the firm grow, but there wasn't that initial alignment referable to what success means personally for them, for the law firm, and for all of us together, that led to some friction. So I think the one thing that I would convey is clarity at inception, even if you have to do it black and white, and I suggest doing that, could be very, very beneficial.
So that can keep you away from actually failing, right? But once someone already has done something that they can't go back from and they've failed, what's the best way for someone to deal with that failure?
The best way to deal with that failure, and again, I would love to tell you, and I would, in my business, there's a lot of people that talk very loudly. Oh, 10 billion in money recovered, or, you see people on TV and they're screaming, and I'm the bulldog, and I'm the they're only showing you their wins.
Right.
Yeah? Every single one of those people has tens, probably hundreds and thousands of losses that they don't advertise and they don't talk about. Right? But there's, and I'm no different than those people. there are situations that arise where we take a case and we want to try to help. And remember, we're trying to service the community at every single level. There are cases that we take that we believe that we can help the client and we can recover a monetary reward for them, and it doesn't work out. Despite our best efforts, despite the client's best efforts and compliance in working with us and working through the case, it doesn't work out. So what does a person do? How does a person overcome that?
Right.
The way that they overcome that is, the way that I've overcome it is that I've woken up the next morning, I've drank my cup of coffee, I've dusted myself off, and I've started again. And that's it.
Every day is a new day.
Every day is a new day, and we don't look back, and we try our very, very best, but we have to know that an inherent part of the human fabric is to fail.
Right.
And failure is not bad. People say failure is bad. Not necessarily.
Right.
Because you don't know where that failure is going to lead you. And if but for that failure, you could have not arrived at this place of grandeur.
Right. It's like I have this podcast is about success, right? So every single person, I make sure to ask about their failures because I think it's a big misconception. Obviously, I'm not going to name my podcast, the failures, podcast, but at the same time, every successful person had failures, and you have to, I think it's a big misconception. People don't see the failures. Like you said, when people go on these news channels, they're not talking about their failures. So I think it's a big thing for people to understand that that's a big part of success. Every person, I think whether it's 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, looking back, they see that as a stepping stone and not, a stumbling block.
I think what you said is very, very vital. And if there's one thing that people take out of this entire podcast that we've done together, it's this point, is that failure is an inherent part of the human condition. Every single one of us fails. We're not angels.
Right.
Every single one of us fails. Every single one of us falls. And really, we want to prevent the fall, and we want to not replicate the fall. Everybody falls. But really, the crux of life is how we respond to that fall. Mm-hmm. What is our attitude like when we lift ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we move forward? If we move forward with optimism and to do good and to bring out good, then no matter what, nobody can argue with me. I'd say that respectfully. Every single person that does that will end up in a healthy place, in a positive place, and in a higher place than they would have been.
Yeah.
We think that since we're going through a stormy episode in our lives,
I think an important thing is also looking at it from big picture and just knowing, based on everyone else that's older than me, based on all these successful people that are saying all their failures now help them get to the place that they're in today. I think you also just have to take a look at it from like a bird's eye view and be like, I don't understand it right now, but this will be a stepping stone to my success in the future.
I will also say that, the people do undergo traumatic events in their lives.
Right, 100%.
And it's very, very difficult sometimes in the midst of that trauma to see that sunrise.
Right.
So, not to downplay that, but really, if a person goes through that and they wake up the next morning and, and they move forward and they put a smile on their face, that's a strong person. Mm. That's a successful person. That is a person that's going to accomplish what they need to accomplish in this world and fulfill their purpose. It's that reaction to the failure.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay. And just to move on a little bit, so the fact that you're here right now just shows that you're a humble person. You're talking about your failures. You're talking about how you're the employee to your clients. They're the employer, right? So you're a very humble person. How do you maintain that humility while creating so much success?
First and foremost, my wife helps me to keep humble. She
keeps you grounded.
Yeah, she gives me the garbage to take out on my way out to the office. Look, I'm going to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I be humble? If I've accomplished anything in my life, it's all thanks to God. And
right.
I think humility is perhaps the most underrated character trait. It's something that we need much more in this world.
Right.
If a person's able to cultivate humility in himself, that person can raise to tremendous grandeur. Right. It's a central tenet of life.
I mean, it makes sense why people would, get a bit of an ego when they work so hard 10 years into working hard every day, every night. They see now success. They're like, oh, it's for me.
I will tell you that some of the and you know, I'm just speaking from my, you know, the idiosyncrasies of my profession, you know, kind of what I experience. Some of the cases that I put the most effort into and that we spent the most time on, we make no money on. Some of the cases that we spend a little bit less time on than what you would have thought, we get tremendous results for clients, and there are tremendous successes for the law firm. Why is that? Why is that?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, every single case that we handle is treated like $1 million case. And we look at every single client as a human being, and we want to try to help them, and we want to do the best that we can for them. And we put in everything that we can for them into every single case. But at the end of the day, there's only so much that's in our hands. It's really, you know, look, I'm an observant person, you know, I believe in a higher power, and look, everything is in God's hands. And that's actually something that we cultivate in my practice. You should know, I have a rule in my law firm that we do not sue religious institutions. So any religious institution, school, anything of that nature, and we've passed on many, many big cases that could have millions of dollars in recoveries, because I think to foster a God consciousness and, you know, an overall consciousness of a higher power, I think that's something healthy, and I think that's something positive.
Yeah, and everyone in your firm agrees with that.
I don't know, but since I'm paying them, nobody's arguing with me.
Right, exactly. That's so funny. Okay, fine. Sorry. Okay, sorry. I usually look ahead, but
it's okay.
What advice would you give to a kid like me, right? Someone that doesn't know what they want to do for a living, and now I'm like, you know, going to college or coming out of high school. What advice would you give to a young professional that's now coming out of high school, coming out of college, and they don't know what they want to do?
I would tell them to find people that they want to emulate. Not necessarily what the person that they want to be, a lawyer or a doctor or you know, there are many wise people around us, many experienced people. You know, a person says to himself, and again, everybody's different. If a person wants to be a teacher, an educator, then he has to go find somebody that he respects and appreciates as an educator and speak with them. Right? If a person wants to be, you know, whatever sphere you're looking to enter, or without a sphere, look, without naming names, you know, I know people that I could come to that are older than me by many decades, and that I could ask about advice on any topic in the world, and they would give me excellent advice. I think cultivating that mentorship and finding a mentor, somebody that you can look up to and you can come to and ask those questions, who's not going to be coming from a place of, you know, prejudice, I think that it would be very beneficial. I also do believe that it's easier said than done. Right? So at the end of the day, not everybody has clarity when they're 18 years old on what they want to do for the next 70 years. In fact, I think that's probably pretty rare. You know, so at that juncture, a person has to see what his natural interests are, and he has to start looking and testing and doing internships in various places and seeing if it's to their liking.
All right, got it. Okay. So, like you, this is the last question. Like you, when you were only 4 years into the business, you started a company, right? So now, someone that's already found their passion and they're a few years into the business, what advice would you give to them to start their own business?
I think that, number one, life is very, very short. And if a person really has a drive and a yearning and a burning desire to offer a superior product than what they've seen in the marketplace, then manifesting that desire, not only I believe is something smart to do, I feel like it's their obligation, because we all need to work for the betterment of the world. Right. So if I'm working as, you know, in whatever business I'm working in, the first thing is that recognition that you have an obligation and a responsibility to go out there and to kind of raise the standard up for everybody else. I also understand that there's a security blanket, right, and there's a safety of getting a paycheck and working for somebody else, and not everybody has the ability or the funding to be able to go out on a limb. So the truth is, it's not necessarily owning a business, operating a business. It's not necessarily for everyone. There are some personality types that are able to fully manifest themselves working under other people's umbrellas. And kind of my job as a leader, and you know, unfortunately not everybody has this, and I'm trying to work on it myself, is to give every individual the space to fulfill their potential at our law firm. So if you go to our law firm, we have a lot of very, very intelligent, very professional, very big people working for us. And the reason that we have that, I believe, is that we give them the ability and the space to kind of fulfill their potential and reach their peak of professional development. So even though I do encourage those who have a desire for entrepreneurship to go out and start their companies, and certainly that's an amazing thing and it does work for many people, and you should do that, there are other personality types that, it's not a one size fits all. That sometimes for certain people, if you find the right environment, a person can fulfill their potential, working somewhere else.
So your employees, right? Let's say you have an employee that their personality type is they should be an employee. So you as the employer help them reach their greatest potential as an employee where they should be.
I would say that would be my greatest failing if I was not able and willing, ready, willing, and able to give every single of my employees the ability and opportunity to go to the greatest heights. And what I convey to them is, if you buy into what we're doing, to our values and our mission, I will take you to a high place that you never imagined yourself. We're going to break every single ceiling. Whatever you felt was the peak for your professional development and personal development, I will help you break that ceiling many times over.
Right. Wow. I'm not trying to get into law, but if I did, I'd want you to be my boss.
I appreciate it, brother. You can always come have an intinternship by us and dip your toe into it.
Yeah, thank you. And any last things you want to say before we close out?
No, I really I appreciate you having me on, and I'm wishing you a lot of tremendous success.
Thank you.
In guiding yourself first and foremost, but also guiding the younger generation. I really think that what you brought out is something very, very vital, and it's that people have a misplaced conception and perception that the younger generation is not as hardworking or lazier or doesn't have as refined character, the character traits that the older generations did, and I think it's patently false. I think our generation, I think I'm not so old, but I'll lump myself in with the younger generation, but even more so your generation, you guys can reach the grandest heights. You guys have the best character traits. It's just you guys need to find something that you believe in. You need to find a sense of purpose and a sense of mission. And if you do that, then you guys take off like a rocket ship. And that's what my wish is for you.
Also, I think that most people, it's a big thing about comparing yourself to others, right? So let's just say that my generation did have no work ethic, right? And no good character traits to become successful. That doesn't mean you can't, right? That's another thing. So like I always hear, this generation is going in the worst place, right? It's going in the worst place, but that doesn't mean I can't be successful. That means overall the majority of people aren't going to be, right?
Absolutely right. And the more that you are focused, and I guarantee you, not only will you reach the greatest heights, you're going to impact those around you, and you're going to raise up your generation to reach those heights and to manifest their potential. And really, that's leadership. Mm-hmm. Leadership is allowing others to manifest their full potential and to grow to the greatest heights.
While you're creating success, you bring everyone up with you.
That is the ABCs.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone enjoyed this. So
thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you having me on.
All right.